Thanks to Survivor for sponsoring this video. So this is a glorious time for smartphones. You no longer have to spend the $1,000, $1,500, sometimes even $2,000 to get an amazing smartphone. And what used to be sort of termed mid-tier are now kinda lower flagship phones, and this is probably the best time ever to jump into that mid-tier phones. In fact, two of the best devices that released really just a month apart from each other, the OnePlus 8T and the iPhone 12, have a ton in common, but they also have some differences and features that you might want or might want to sit out. So we want to put these two phones head to head, pick a winner. So clearly these are different, like, looking phones, right? I mean, physically, the way they are different. The iPhone 12 is a throwback to the iPhone 4, iPhone 5 boxy design style. And quite frankly, I love the way the iPhone 12 feels. If they had done nothing else except for change the look and feel of the phone, I think a lot of people would have been happy. iPhones don't change their design very often. When they do, people tend to just gravitate to them just because they're different. It's the power, it's the vacuum sucking sort of job that Apple does sort of to get people into a fury with seemingly minimal updates. And the iPhone 12 does bring a lot more to the table aside from its design, but it's sort of the most jarring thing that you can see. On the OnePlus side, they're sticking with the design that's been working. We saw it introduced a couple generations ago. It's iterative, but it's the best version of that iterative design. This phone feels solid in the hand. You can feel the weight, and whereas the iPhone 12 feels oddly light. And sometimes people might like that. To me, it almost makes the phone feel kind of cheap, despite it obviously not being a cheap phone and not being made of cheap materials. And while I really like the boxed off edge of the iPhone 12, the heft and the weight of the OnePlus 8T, at least initially, feel better to me. Alright, so the design is one thing, but I've talked about it. I am a screen junkie. I think if you have a bad display or not a good display, it's the way you interact with the phone. Nothing else is going to seem good if what you can visually see from the device is not. Very different approaches here with the 8T and the iPhone 12. On the iPhone side, gone is the LCD. And Apple's put in a really amazing quality OLED display, a nice welcome addition to a phone that costs, just under $800. It is there, it is great. It's the same display Apple has in their Pro line of phones. But what's not there is a high refresh rate. Not even 90 Hertz, it is a 60 Hertz display. That brings us to the 8T, a phone that costs $50 less than where the iPhone 12 starts. And you've got a bigger display at 6.5 versus 6.1. It is lower resolution, but you have a 120 Hertz display. So it's really a question of which camp are you in? If you're an iPhone user who's always used iPhones, you are not gonna notice even for a hot second 120 Hertz display, but you will notice how much better the OLED display looks than the LCD you might have had on the iPhone 11 or early generation iPhones. That is a big jump, and I don't want to discount that. And while the display on the iPhone 12 is still really good, as somebody who's used higher refresh rates, I will still gravitate to that almost all the time because it makes things look that much better, even just generic things like scrolling. And this is a big step for OnePlus. They used to make really bad displays. We started seeing that change with kind of the 7s, and they got much better with obviously the 8 line, but now these are top tier displays. Now, if you're comparing color accuracy to color accuracy, then the iPhone is still going to have sort of a better color science. But for me, for a refresh rate, I'm going 8T. If you have not used 120 Hertz, then you'll probably prefer what's on the iPhone. But if you've used it and you know it, it's really hard to not want to have it. I think the biggest story, aside from display, with really any phone coming out in 2020 is cameras. When you realize how good cameras are getting on smartphones at any price, it is staggering to see. And these two phones are no exception. Now, Apple has started out of the gate really good with stills and really good with video. They've always been some version of good. They may not have been the best. That crown typically has gone to Google, but their stills were always just some version of really good and really usable. And when it came to video, nobody could beat Apple. And that was really up until this year when the Snapdragon 865 came out, which the 8T has, enabled a lot of things in video that we just weren't seeing with regularity on Android. And on the OnePlus side, aside from screen, camera quality was sort of the one thing you could knock them on. If I had a nickel for every time I heard somebody say, oh, if I could just get the pixel camera in OnePlus, it'd be the perfect phone. That was sort of the mantra of OnePlus. You're getting a great OS, solid built phone, but man, dem cameras. OnePlus clearly heard, and OnePlus clearly listened. We saw those changes with the OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 8 Pro, and those are also here with the OnePlus 8T. So if I wasn't looking at the pictures that I took on each phone, I think it would be hard to tell, and I love doing these kind of blind tests. So I'm gonna throw them up here. Here are the same photos that were taken at the same time with both. Take a look at each and see if you can pick which one you like better. It'll put up a broad swath of samples, including night mode. Each one I think is doing a really nice job with highlights. The shadows aren't lost on either side, and color reproduction is really accurate. So, I don't know if you guessed it, A was the OnePlus 8T, B was the iPhone 12, and if at any point you weren't sure which one was which, that is a huge credit to OnePlus. I want to reiterate that. This is a company whose cameras were not good a few years ago, and the fact that even you have to look at these tough to see the difference is awesome. There are two extreme examples where the iPhone definitely wins, and that is night mode, and that is if you are oddly shooting directly into the sun, you can start to see the iPhone handle the HDR stuff much better, and there's just much more detail in the night mode. And the big caveat here is how often are you relying on night mode? How often are you shooting with the sun directly coming into your lens? Probably not very much. But if you are doing any of those things, at least you know. But for my buying, that wouldn't even factor into my decision making even a little bit. Video though, and probably predictably, is another story altogether. Regardless of which phone you decide to go with, you're gonna want to protect your investment. If you opt for the iPhone 12 or 12 Pro, the best way to protect it is with Survivor Endurance Case. So first and foremost, it is guaranteed for life. So however long you've got that phone, if you somehow bust the case, which I doubt you will, it's got 3-layer protection, it's got military testing for jaw protection up to 14 feet. Chances are nothing's gonna happen to it, but if something does, you will get a new one for your one-time cost, which is an awesome way to go. It's got kind of a textured feel on the sides for a really good grip as somebody who drops phones a lot and has kids playing with their phones. I need a case and I need really good drop and fling it across the room protection. And that's what I'm getting here. All the stuff that you get with your iPhone 12 will still work. The 5G antenna, whether it's sub-6 or millimeter wave. Also kind of important nowadays, there's antimicrobial protection built into the case. That's gonna eliminate 99.9% of surface bacteria and germs. It's available for $39.99 if you wanna order it online. We'll link to it down below. Otherwise, just walk into a Verizon store and pick one up for yourself. So Dolby Vision HDR is on the iPhone 12, and I don't know how else to describe it, but it seems like a cheat code for video, and right now, only Apple has it. And the 8T does a really nice job on video side too, and if you got that, I don't think you'd be disappointed. Stabilization is still incredible, and the overall look is great, but the iPhone's video is just in another league. But because it is light years ahead of really anything else right now, if you're using Dolby Vision HDR, you want to upload it to Instagram and Twitter, it's gonna look like a horrible mess of overexposure because those platforms don't support it. So you might not know this, but right now I am evacuated from my home, and I was trying to share some video of the Silverado fires going on. I shot it with my iPhone 12 very quickly. I didn't think in the spur of the moment to go in and turn the HDR off. And on my phone, these looked like beautiful videos. On the web, however, you can see what happened. So it's weird, right? It's capable of such amazing video that really nothing can play back right now. So you can watch it on your phone, and if you want to share it really anywhere, you've got to turn that off, making it more on par with what the AT offers. So it's a very strange juggling act of like future-proof, and soon TVs will be able to support all this. Even Apple's own Apple TV, you gotta do some weird settings to get it to play. Your phone can do it, and it's definitely a flex from Apple, but it is definitely of like questionable utility right now. But taking that sort of HDR stuff out, what Apple's doing with just straight up video fidelity still looks much better to my eye than the 18. This kind of struck me as funny, right? Like Apple gets criticized for being years behind, right? Like I talked about earlier, the phones still don't even have 120 hertz. But like this Dolby Vision HDR, they're years ahead, and it's not the most useful feature right now. So I kind of chuckled from it. I think if I could just like Cliff Notes the whole thing for video, the iPhone is going to take superior video for stabilization, frame rate, it's going to look better. But again, if you don't have them side by side, I was really impressed with what OnePlus has done. As somebody who's seen the video evolution from the original OnePlus One to now the 8 line, it is drastic. And I can appreciate the improvements, and OnePlus, to their credit, also moves very fast on software updates. So things like video and the still side are always improving. So while the gap on cameras for Apple and OnePlus used to be like a chasm wide, let's call it a Pacific Ocean chasm, now we're more like a Mississippi River between the two, and it's getting closer than it ever has been before. So that's like most of the stuff. It's like, it's the meat, it's the middle part, all right? Don't judge me, I've been stuck at home. But there's a lot of other stuff that make the phones who they are. And OnePlus and Apple, like they've done for everything else we talked about, have very different approaches. So charging is obviously a pretty big deal, right? Phones gotta work. OnePlus has done like black magic with charging over the past years, and the AT is no exception. Where it comes to Apple, you don't get a charger in the box at all. OnePlus is giving you a 65-watt charger included, which took this phone from 0 to 100, just take a guess for how long? 37 minutes. That is insane. There's thermal management that's built in here, so the phone's not going to blow up or get hot, and you can do it, more than once without degrading your battery. OnePlus has cracked that code, and fast charging, I'd have never seen ever be faster than this. But the flip side of that, there's no wireless charging, which is weird. OnePlus has got into wireless charging. They have their own fast wireless charging system. It's not here. Apple has Qi wireless charging as well as MagSafe. But if you want to take advantage of MagSafe's faster 15-watt charger, you have to spend $20 to use Apple's 20-watt charger, and only Apple's 20-watt charger to get those speeds. So weird approaches here. So I talked about the feel of the phone, how like the battery felt like it wasn't in there. It's a 2,815 milliamp hour battery. And while it might not feel like it's in the phone, it is definitely in there, and it's doing a really good job. So here's an example. Now I was on Wi-Fi, and I want to be honest, pretty much all of the day, but taking the phone off the charger at 8, by the time I went to bed, and it was like 10, 11 o'clock, I still had about 70% of my battery life. And that is staggering. Now 5G is set to auto and it wasn't on, and if I was using 5G all the time, or I had it set to on all the time, your battery would be all over the board. But at the very least, this is a day phone. No matter what you do, with 5G on and the screen brightness turned up, you should get through a full day. And I think that's the best you can ask for a phone right now. So I've been pretty impressed with what Apple's done, despite it not having the biggest battery in the world. But like everything else in this comparison, OnePlus, super different. They put a ginormous battery in the AT with 4,500 milliamp hours, and that one can also do 5G, and I'm getting very similar battery life. It is a full day phone, either of these. Now battery life, I'm gonna go with the one I can charge faster. But if you're not plugging your phone in to get that 20% in 5 minutes, it's a coin toss on the battery side if you want the faster or the wireless charging. Both seem to be very good for that. I mean, if you look at both of these phones too, on a pure spec sheet, it looks like a slaughter, right? You've got the 865, you've got 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, you've got a bigger display on the AT, but it boils down to user experience. You only have 4 gigs of RAM in the iPhone and a smaller battery, but you've got the A14 processor in there, which is an absolute beast. So specs, I don't think really matter that much anymore, but if you're the kind of person who goes just on a spec sheet, well, the OnePlus has the iPhone beat. You've got 4 biometrics, you've got an in-screen fingerprint reader, which works really well on the OnePlus. It is nice to have at a time when we're all wearing masks. On the iPhone 12, you've got Face ID. I mean, you could, again, reiterating just how vastly different these approaches are. But the biggest difference with these phones, and you knew it was gonna come to this, is iOS and Android. And I've said it for a while. I think what OnePlus is doing with Oxygen OS, and now they're on Oxygen OS 11 based on Android 11, is probably the best interpretation of Android going. They take the best of stock Android and they add options to it to give you, the user, more choice. And I couldn't think of any approach that's less like Apple than that. Apple tells you pretty much, here's how you're going to use your phone, and then you can do whatever you want inside of our tiny little box. Whereas on the OnePlus side, well, that same box is huge, it's spacious, it's 3D, you can do whatever you want. That's going to be a preference thing. But the question I always ask, and you probably already know if you prefer iOS or Android, but if you don't care, if you're buying your first smartphone and you don't, I don't know, if you've been frozen in ice and you're buying your first smartphone and you don't have an iOS versus Android comparison, you're spending $50 less for the OnePlus. Now you're not getting as good video, let's say, and maybe you're getting slightly inferior camera in some things and better on others. This is gonna be a hard one to not say, go for OnePlus. And that's not to say the iPhone 12 is a bad phone. It's probably the iPhone for everybody. If someone asked you which iPhone to get, say the 12, they are going to love it and be thrilled with it. It's a phone that I'm getting for my parents because they love Apple. But if you are on the fence and you don't care about OS, the OnePlus AT is an amazing phone to pick, and I'd probably recommend it to anyone who gives a big shrug emoji when it comes to operating system of choice. If you want to check out any of these cases, they are available in a ton of different colors online. I'll link to it down below, and in store at Verizon.